Today is the final Sunday of the church year. This is the last Sunday in ordinary time. Next Sunday is the first Sunday of Advent, which is a time of preparation. It's a time of darkness, but it's not the darkness of the tomb, it's the darkness of the womb. It is a time for us to nurture and to birth the light of the Christ that is within us. And that is why the church today celebrates what's known as the Feast of Christ the King. Some call it Reign of Christ Sunday. And as I said at the top of the service, hearing words like king and crown and robed in majesty and glory is off-putting to some of us with a progressive theology. Theologians throughout history have had to use the limited terms and concepts and understanding of the people of their time and culture in order to explain the great mystery to the faithful. We live in the 21st century. We don't live in the 4th century when the Nicene Creed was written. Terms like king don't resonate with us in the 21st century. We now have a greater understanding of how the mind works, of how the universe works. And so our theology, too, should be expanding. So, this feast day today of Christ the King, what does it mean for us today? Well, first of all, this feast is not about Jesus. This is not called the Feast of Jesus the King. It's called the Feast of Christ the King. It's not called Reign of Jesus Sunday. It's called Reign of Christ Sunday. I've explained to you before, Jesus and Christ are two different things. This day is not about the coronation of Jesus. Jesus did not want to be a king. I'll keep saying it over and over until you get it. Jesus did not want to be worshipped as a king. He spoke several times about that in the gospel, and I think he would be repulsed by the idea that we are worshiping him as a king. That's not what today is about. Today is about the Christ. Now, we heard in our words of integration this morning that was explained beautifully, I thought. That Jesus was born 2,000 years ago. But 14.5 billion years ago, Christ was born. I know this is a difficult concept to understand, but if you can get this, you will understand more fully what Christianity is all about. Christianity is not about worshiping Jesus as a king. Christianity is about embodying the Christ. The Christ came about 14.5 billion years ago when God birthed everything into existence. When God breathed life into everything, this energy, this essence, this light, this power of love, this presence of peace, God infused that in everything. That's the Christ. That's the Christ. I am sure that there are people in this room who have felt that energy, that essence, that presence and power. Maybe it was when your child was born. Maybe it was when you held the hand of a loved one as they were dying. Maybe it was a walk in nature, or when you looked up at the stars. You felt that. You felt the oneness with it. Jesus was a person who felt that 24/7. So, When we were in New Mexico, a group of us from Douglas UCC went to New Mexico a couple of weeks ago. We were surrounded by rock formations that were billions of years old. And as we stood on that sacred ground surrounded by those rocks, we felt the power and the presence of the Christ. It was very real to us. It was palpable. But Jesus, the man from Nazareth, never stepped foot in New Mexico. The indigenous people, whose spirituality dates back millions of years before Jesus was even born, felt that power and presence. And if you ask them what their religion is, if you ask them what they believe in, they don't have any written scripture. They point to that ground, they point to the rock formations, and they say, this is our religion. This is what we believe in. That's the Christ. That's what we're celebrating today. So for my progressive friends, think of Christ the King Sunday or Reign of Christ Sunday as power of the universe Sunday, as authority of the cosmos Sunday, as rule of love Sunday. Jesus was a human being who 2,000 years ago was able to become one with that, was able to fully embody that 24/7. And he said, we could do it too. He said, all of the things that I have done, you can do. And then he added, these things and greater. But none of us did it. Because it's hard. It is so much easier to worship the person who did it than to do it for ourselves. But he didn't want that. He wanted us to do it for ourselves. His whole thing was, do as I did. Follow my way. Don't worship me. Follow me. You can do this too. But most of us have not done it. To fully embody the Christ, to live from that place of pure love and peace and joy, is not easy. But it is possible. That's what Jesus came to show us. It is possible. Now, in today's gospel, Jesus, after he attained the Christ presence and was pure peace and love, and was preaching pure peace and love, and telling people that they could do what he did, heal and work miracles, he was crucified. And so my question for you today is, if Jesus was all love and peace, and he was telling everybody to be love and peace, why did he need to be silenced? I mean, if he was showing everyone kindness and respect, why would that be a threat? Why would you kill someone who's all love? Well, throughout history, even our own recent history, we have seen examples of that. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves and was assassinated. Gandhi worked to free people from colonial rule and was assassinated. Martin Luther King spoke out for civil rights and was assassinated. Harvey Milk spoke out for gay rights and was assassinated. John Lennon spoke of a world where there were no countries and no religions, and he was assassinated. Nelson Mandela spoke out against apartheid, and he was silenced and imprisoned for 3 decades. This is way too much to be a coincidence. What did all of these people of peace and love and nonviolence have in common? They all spoke out publicly for the inclusion of more and more people. And that's a threat to people. We've got to silence you. You see, if I'm here and you're here, and you get afforded more and more rights, now you're threatening to me. So I will do everything I can to silence you. Our Christian church has done a very good job of that. For hundreds of years now, the Christian church has worked very hard to silence voices of inclusion in its ranks. We've seen it in our country, and we've seen it in our own church. What do we do about this? It seems like the power of fear is stronger than the power of love. But don't believe that lie. Martin Luther King never lived to see the first black president. Harvey Milk never lived to see marriage equality. But those things happened because the spirit of those men lived on in others who continued to speak the truth. Now, after Jesus died, his disciples did not continue to speak the truth. Not right away. They were in fear. We hear that they were huddled together in a room, and it says they were locked in fear. Locked. They didn't know what to do with their fear and grief and sadness. So they kept silent. But then what happened? The presence of the Christ came alive in them. It gave them courage. It spoke through them. They felt the presence of the Christ in that room, and it was very real and alive to them. And they had an aha. They said, you can kill Jesus, but you can't kill the Christ. You can't kill the power of love, the presence of peace, the authority of the cosmos, the power of the universe. That you can kill, and they realize that's our power. No one's taken that away from us. And they went out into the world. They left that locked room, and they went out and they continued to do as Jesus did. And what did Jesus do? He spoke for the inclusion of more and more people. Did that put the disciples' lives in risk? Absolutely. And some of them faced the same fate that Jesus did. But they did not give up. Fear killed Jesus. But don't blame Pontius Pilate. If you remember, people were given a choice. They could choose Barabbas, a liar and a thief, or they could choose Jesus, a man of truth. And it wasn't Pontius Pilate, it was the people who said, crucify him, crucify him. They shouted it. The people wanted Jesus crucified. Again, if he was peace and love, just a polite, sweet man, why would crowds be chanting for him to be crucified? He was crucified because he spoke the truth, and that threatened people. Now, many of us right now are like the disciples. We are locked in fear. We're sad, we're angry, we're worried, and we're scared. And as I mentioned last Sunday, that's an okay place to be. The disciples needed that time. They needed it. And we need it. But we can't stay locked in that room forever. We have to continue to do the work of the Christ. Because what Christianity is about is for us to bring about the reign of Christ. That's what today's feast day is about. We remind ourselves that we're here on this earth plane during this incarnation to manifest the Christ within ourselves so that we can bring about the reign of Christ on earth. How do we do that in our fear? Well, Jesus in today's gospel gave an amazing first step. It's a hard one, but it's an important one. Jesus is crucified, is on the cross, and he says to the people who chanted for him to be crucified, and the people who whipped him and nailed him to the cross, he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He didn't call them idiots. He didn't say, "You people are monsters." He said, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They're not as aware as I am. They don't understand." He didn't give his power over to them. When you say, "You're monsters, you messed everything up, you whatever," you're giving your power to someone else. Jesus is saying, there's only one power. There's only one power in me and in the universe, God. That's where my power is. I'm not giving it to these people, and that's what forgiveness is. I know forgiveness is very misunderstood. Forgiveness is not condoning the bad behavior of other people. Forgiveness is ending your suffering. It's freeing yourself. It's taking back your power. You remember your power. No one else has your power. You have it. No one's taken away your voice. You have it. Forgiveness and speaking out for justice are not mutually exclusive. I know some people think, well, to forgive means that you just be quiet. Okay, I forgive you. It is your duty as a Christian to forgive those who have hurt you, to forgive those who have betrayed you. It is. In fact, it's probably your first duty. Jesus said it over and over again. Bless those who persecute you. Turn the other cheek. Love your enemy. Forgive not just once, but 70 times, 7 times. So it is your duty to forgive those who have hurt you. That's your Christian duty. But it is also your Christian duty to speak the truth and to work for justice. Let me give you an example. If your son has multiple sclerosis and his teacher at school mocks his physical disability in front of the classroom, it is your duty as a Christian to forgive that teacher. No matter how difficult that may be for you to do, that's your duty. But it is also your duty to speak out and to make sure that that teacher is held accountable for his actions. It is your Christian duty to make sure that that teacher does not abuse his power to hurt, intimidate any other student that's entrusted to his care. They're both your Christian duty. Forgiveness doesn't mean being silent in the face of injustice. Forgiveness means, in my power, I look in the face of injustice and I speak truth to it. That's what forgiveness is. Now, I learned that from Elie Wiesel. Some of you know Elie Wiesel was a Nobel Prize-winning author who survived the Holocaust. A time in our recent history when people were forced to register. People had to wear gold stars because of their religion, or wear purple triangles because of their sexuality. And as all this was happening, their neighbors, millions of people, kept silent. And as those stars and triangle people were stripped of their rights and dragged out of their homes, those millions of people just stood by, silent. What good Christians. Elie Wiesel said this: I swore never to be silent whenever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Whenever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or views, that place must at that moment become the center of the universe. There may be times when we are powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. And Bishop Desmond Tutu said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor." My friends, if we call ourselves Christians, we have to continue to be about the work of Jesus. We cannot stay silent when we see injustice happen. We must be people of love and peace and forgiveness and nonviolence, just as Jesus was. But we must also do what he did, to speak out for the inclusion of more and more people. I told you this earlier this year, at the beginning of this year. I said we are living in the greatest time in human history. I still believe that. In just our lifetimes, we have seen civil rights and women's rights and gay rights. More and more people are being afforded these rights. And why is that? Because more and more of us on the planet are awakening. We are. And we're still awakening. Nothing's changed. We're still awakening. It's an exciting time in our history to live. The train has left the station. It's moving forward. The only thing that will stop it is our silence and our fear. So stay locked in the room of fear as long as you need to, but eventually know you must leave that room and continue the work of Jesus. Because your purpose for being is to manifest the Christ presence within yourself and bring about the reign of Christ to the earth, to bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's why we're here. That's our purpose for being. That's what Reign of Christ Sunday is all about. Namaste.